most important Apple TV rumor didn't get stronger this week. It got weaker. That shift changes which other rumors suddenly matter more. A few days ago, the outlook for the next Apple TV was simple. The timing seemed reasonable, the chip rumors looked solid, and the bigger features were just theories. Now the balance has shifted. The launch window looks less stable than it did. But that weakness actually makes one of the more interesting theories easier to believe. This isn't just a repeat of the previous update. It's a correction. The headline is straightforward. I'm now less confident in the old early 2026 timing. I'm not writing it off, but I'm lowering my expectations. At the same time, the logic for Apple TV becoming a camera and home control device is getting stronger. This matters because once a launch slips, we have to stop looking at it as a standard refresh. Apple no longer looks like they are prepping a simple streaming box. It looks like they are trying to align multiple home and AI pieces that aren't ready at the same time. First, let's look at timing, because that's where the scoreboard moved the most. Earlier this week, we assumed Apple could hit an early 2026 window with the traditional upgrade, a faster chip and better software headroom. But after reports of serial-link delays on March 9th, that story looks weaker. It isn't impossible, just less likely. The logic tying this product to a near-term launch isn't as clean as it was. If the broader AI rollout is taking longer to settle, then any device that relies on it inherits that uncertainty. Apple can ship hardware before the software is perfect, but if the product is built around a smarter home, the timing is harder to pin down. Right now, I'm only somewhat confident in the launch timing, whereas before I was very confident. This change is a big deal because timing frames every buyer's decision. It changes whether you wait a few months, buy the current model today, or view every new rumor as part of an imminent release. But the timing rumor getting weaker doesn't make the whole picture worse. In one specific area, it does the opposite. The chip story still holds up well. I'm pretty confident we'll see the A17 Pro and N1 chip. These parts solve obvious problems for Apple, like better gaming and long-term software support. Stronger on-device processing matters even more if Apple wants the box to handle voice, facial recognition, and smart home coordination. That's why the silicon remains in my high-confidence tier. This leads to the rumor that actually got more believable this week, the camera and communications angle. A few days ago, it was easy to dismiss this as overreach. You could argue the Apple TV is just a living room box for streaming and apps. Adding a camera or a home presence sensor felt like too much. Today, that skepticism is harder to maintain. As tvOS leans further into FaceTime and user profiles, Apple is showing us where the living room is going. It's no longer just about content. It's about presence and identity. This doesn't mean every feature arrives at once, but the direction is clear. Once the launch becomes less about a quick refresh and more about a delayed AI wave, the camera idea fits much better. This is the rumor that quietly gained ground. There wasn't a huge confirmation, but the context changed. If Apple TV is part of a wider home strategy, a camera isn't a weird extra anymore. It becomes a potential reason the update is taking longer. It explains why Apple needs stronger silicon and why this model is more significant than a normal revision. This is a very different story than just a faster Apple TV. Apple may be deciding how personal the device should feel when you walk up to it, and how tightly it should connect to Siri. That is a much bigger product question. To update the scoreboard, launch timing is down. The A17 Pro stays strong, and the logic for a camera-enabled home hub is moving up. That inversion is what matters. It explains why this update is more useful than just saying the launch is delayed. A delay on its own is boring. What matters is how that delay changes the shape of the product. If this were just a simple streaming box, a delay would make it less compelling. But if Apple is trying to line up a broader AI story, the wait might be annoying, but the final package becomes much more meaningful. This is where the buyer's decision changes from earlier this week. Wednesday's advice was based on timing, but that math has to be updated. If the only reason you were waiting was a soon release date, that reason is weaker now. You have less reason to expect a launch in the near term. If your current setup is frustrating you, buying the existing model just got easier to justify. But there's a second half to that. If you are waiting for new capabilities, like FaceTime, home control, or a more ambitious interface. The reason to stay patient is actually stronger. That sounds contradictory, but it isn't. The case for a fast launch got worse, but the case for a big upgrade got better. Your decision now depends on what kind of buyer you are. If you just want reliable streaming and a polished experience today, the current box is a safe buy. A weaker launch window reduces the penalty of buying right before a refresh. But if you want the next Apple TV to feel meaningfully different, more central to your home, this update gives you a credible reason to wait. The most interesting version of this product is now easier to imagine than the simplest one. That is the real shift on the scoreboard. It also tells us what to watch for next. There are two major triggers to track. First, watch for clarity on the Siri rollout. If confidence there recovers, the Apple TV launch timing will stabilize too. If Siri remains messy or slips further, the Apple TV becomes a later wave product, likely arriving much deeper into the year. Second, watch how Apple positions its home story. If we see a move toward a smarter household interface, it supports the camera and communication rumors. If that framing never appears, the simple chip refresh theory becomes the favorite again. Right now, I'm only somewhat confident in the launch window. I'm fairly confident in the A17 Pro and N1 chip package, and I'm now somewhat confident in the camera and home control direction. That last part is what people should pay attention to. Sometimes a rumor gets stronger because the surrounding logic changes and the pieces finally fit. That's what happened here. So here's the takeaway. Wait if you're holding out for a device with a broader scope. But if you were only waiting because you feared a launch was just around the corner, you can let that fear go. My current call is still to wait, but for a different reason. It's not because a launch is imminent, it isn't. It's because the next package is turning into something more ambitious than a normal spec bump. A clear Siri schedule or a smaller home strategy could change this call. Until then, the scoreboard has shifted. Timing is down, but the product's roll is up. Tomorrow, I'll look at the trade-off most people skip. Is Apple more likely to prioritize a cheaper Apple TV or a better one?